Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Beatles Forever. It's time for the Beatles on this date. So let's see what's been going on July the 6th. And the stories come from the website The Beatles Bible. Paul McCartney launches a design competition for graphic designers and illustrators. And this was on a Wednesday, July the 6th, 2011. Paul McCartney is inviting graphic designers and illustrators to create artworks inspired by the 1970 album McCartney and 1980's McCartney 2. Talenthouse.com has launched a competition which runs until August 16, 2011. McCartney will choose the winner from all qualified submissions with special consideration for top voted entries. The second place winner, selected by Paul McCartney, will receive deluxe editions of the albums, a pair of tickets to a forthcoming concert, and a copy of Adobe CS5. Third place will be rewarded with deluxe albums in the Adobe software, while 6 highest voted submissions will each receive copies of the albums and share a prize pool of $600. Full terms and conditions, as well as entry forms and videos for Maybe I'm Amazed and Coming Up, on the Talent House website. Voting begins on August 17th on a Wednesday and ends on a Tuesday, August 23rd, and the winners will be announced on September the 14th. The second story is Mastering Imagine by John Lennon, and this is dated Tuesday, July the 6th, 1971, John Lennon Studio. This is at the Bell Sound Studios, New York City. Engineer Sam Feldman. John Lennon's second solo album, Imagine, was mastered on July the 6th, 1971. The songs had received final overdubs and had been mixed on 4th and 5th of July. On this day, with songs complete, the album was mastered by Sam Feldman. Imagine was mastered at the Bell Sound Studios, situated at 237 West 54th Street in Manhattan, New York City. Bell Sound was an independent recording studio operating in New York City from 1950 to 1976. The third story is the Beatles' first trip to India, and this is dated Wednesday, July the 6th, 1966. The day after their troubled trip to the Philippines came to an end, the Beatles arrived in India for the first time, aside from a very brief stop in Calcutta on the morning of June the 8th, 1964. The 1966 Indian visit, following a brief refueling stop in Bangkok early in the morning of July the 6th, 1966. Although they had hoped to spend time in India, resting and discovering the country's music, their stay was anything but relaxing. 600 fans greeted their arrival at Delhi Airport in New Delhi. In the Oberoi Hotel where they stayed was soon surrounded. Before the tour was planned, I had an arrangement made that on that return journey from the Philippines to London, I would stop off in India because I wanted to go and check it out and buy a good sitar. I had asked Neil if he would come with me because I didn't want to be in India on my own. He agreed, and we had booked for the two of us to get off in Delhi. Somehow, between leaving London and going through Germany and Japan to the Philippines, one by one the others had all said, "I think I'll come too." But we got to go to Delhi, and after the experience in the Philippines, the others didn't want to know. They didn't want another foreign country. They wanted to go home. I was feeling a little bit like that myself. I could have gone home, but I was in Delhi, and as I had made the decision to get off there, I thought, well, it'll be okay. At least in India, they don't know the Beatles. We'll slip into this nice ancient country and have a bit of peace and quiet. The others were saying, "See you around." Then we're going straight home. Then the stewardess came down the plane and said, "Sorry, you got to get off. We sold your seats on to London," and she made them all leave the plane. So we got off. It was night time, and we were standing there waiting for our luggage, and then the biggest disappointment I had was the realization of the extent of the fame of the Beatles, because there were so many dark faces in the night behind a wire mesh fence, all shouting, "Beatles, Beatles," and following us. We got in the car and drove off, and they were all on little scooters with the siccas and turbans all going, "Hi, Beatles, Beatles." I thought, oh no, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but Beatles have nowhere to lay their heads. That was George Harrison, and he said that for the anthology. And he also stated, the Beatles managed to sneak out using the hotel's rear exit and did some sightseeing and shopping. Delhi was really a funny feeling. I'm sure a lot of people have had this experience when they go there. In parts of New Delhi that were built by the British, it isn't the little streets you might expect. We were on big wide roads, dual carriageways with roundabouts. The amazing thing was that there was so many people out there. All the roundabouts had hundreds and hundreds of people sitting in the dark, a lot of them squatting in groups, including old guys with pipes. There were crowds of people everywhere. I was thinking, God, what's happened? It was as if the Super Bowl was on, or there had been a big disaster with all the people milling around. Then you got to realize that's how it is. There's a lot of people there. And that was George Harrison from Anthology. The fourth story was the world premiere of A Hard Day's Night, and this was on July the 6th on a Monday, 1964. The Beatles' first feature film, A Hard Day's Night, had its premiere at the London Pavilion, July the 6th, 1964. The premiere had been attended by the Beatles and their wives and girlfriends, and a host of important guests, including Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon. Nearby, Piccadilly Circus was closed to traffic as 12,000 fans jostled for a glimpse of the group. Paul McCartney from Anthology said, I remember Piccadilly as being completely filled. We thought we would just show up in our limo, but it couldn't get through all the people. It wasn't frightening. We never seemed to get worried by the crowds. It always appeared to be a friendly crowd. There never seemed to be a violent face. It was a charity event held to support of the Variety Club Heart Fund and the Dockland Settlements, and the most expensive tickets cost 15 guineas, which is 15.75 pounds. After the screening, the Beatles, the royal party, and the other guests, including the Rolling Stones, enjoyed a champagne supper party at the Dorchester Hotel, after which some of them adjourned to the Ad-Lib Club until the early hours of the morning. And the last story is kind of an important one. John Lennon meets Paul McCartney. This happened on Saturday, July the 6th, 1957. July the 6th, 1957 was a pivotal day for the history of modern music. It was the day that John Lennon met Paul McCartney for the first time. In the afternoon, the Quarrymen's Skiffle Group played at the Garden Feet of St. Peter's Church, Woolton, Liverpool. The performance took place on a stage in a field behind the church. In the band were Lennon, vocals, guitar, Eric Griffiths, guitar, Colin Hatton, drums, Rod Davies, banjo, Pete Shotton, washboard, and Lynn Gary, tea-chest bass. The group arrived on the back of a lorry. As well as music, there were craft and cake stalls, games of hoopla, police dog demonstrations, and the traditional crowning of the Rose Queen. The fete was a highlight of the year for the residents of the sleepy Liverpool district. The entertainment began at 2 p.m. with the opening procession, which entailed one or two wonderfully festooned lorries crawling at a snail's pace through the village on their ceremonious way to the church field. The first lorry carried the Rose Queen seated on her throne, surrounded by her retinue, all dressed in pink and white satin, sporting long ribbons and handmade roses in their hair. These girls had been chosen from the Sunday school groups on the basis of age and good behavior. The following lorry carried the various entertainers, including the quarrymen. The boys were up there on the back of the moving lorry, trying to stay upright and play their instruments at the same time. John gave up battling with balance and sat with his legs hanging over the edge, playing his guitar and singing. He continued all through the slow journey as the lorry puttered its way along. Jackie and I leaped alongside the lorry with our mother laughing and waving at John, making him laugh. He seemed to be the only one who was really trying to play, and we were really trying to put him off. And that was by Julia Bard, his half-sister, and Imagine This. That evening, the group was due to play again, minus Colin Hatton, this time at the Grand Dance in the church hall on the other side of the road. They were due on the stage at 8 p.m., and admission to the show, in which the quarrymen alternated on stage with the George Edwards Band, was 2 shillings. While setting up their equipment to play, the quarrymen's sometimes tea-chest bass player, Ivan Vaughan introduced the band to one of his classmates from Liverpool Institute, the 15-year-old Paul McCartney. This historic occasion was the first time McCartney met John Lennon, 1 year his senior. McCartney wore a white jacket with silver flecks and a pair of black drainpipe trousers. The pair chatted for a few minutes, and McCartney showed Lennon how to tune a guitar. The instruments owned by Lennon and Griffiths were in G banjo tuning. McCartney then sang Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock and Gene Vince's Bebopalula, along with a melody of songs by Little Richard. Paul McCartney said this in 1995 for Record Collector. I remember coming into the Fete and seeing all the sideshows, and also hearing all this great music wafting in from this little Tannoy system. It was John and the band. I remember I was amazed and thought, oh great, because I was obviously into music. I remember John singing a song called Come Go With Me. He heard it on the radio. He didn't really know the verses, but he knew the chorus. The rest he just made up himself. I just thought, well, he looks good, he's singing well, and he seems like a great lead singer to me. Of course, he had his glasses off, so he really looked suave. I remember John was good. He was really the only outstanding member. All the rest kind of slipped away. And then Paul McCartney said, in the John Lennon by Philip Norman, Lennon was equally impressed with McCartney, who showed natural talent for singing songs that the Quarrymen worked hard to accomplish. McCartney also recalled performing on the church hall piano. He said, I also knocked around the backstage piano, and that would have been a whole lot of shaking going on by Jerry Lee. That's when I remember John leaning over, contributing a deft right hand to the upper octaves, and surprising me with his beery breath. It's not that I was shocked, it's just that I remember this particular detail. And Paul McCartney said that from the book John Lennon by Philip Norman. The particular detail was later recalled by McCartney in his introduction to Lennon's first book in his own right. Paul said, at Woolton Village Fete, I met him. I was a fat schoolboy, and as he leaned an arm on my shoulder, I realized he was drunk. We were 12 then, but in spite of his sideboards, we went on to become teenage pals. The Quarrymen set, remarkably, was recorded by an audience member, Bob Mullenix, on his portable Grundig reel-to-reel tape recorder. In 1994, Mullenix, then a retired policeman, rediscovered the tape, which contained scratchy recordings of the band performing Lonnie Donegan's Putting on the Style and Elvis Presley's Baby Let's Play House. The tape was sold on September the 15th, 1994 at Sotheby's for £78,500. At the time, it was the most expensive recording ever sold at auction. The winning bidder was EMI Records, who considered it for release as part of an anthology project, but chose not to as the sound quality was substandard. And Paul McCartney stated from the book The Lyrics, 1956 to the present. To this very day, it's still a complete mystery to me that it happened at all. Would John and I have met some other way? If Ivan and I hadn't gone to that fete, I'd actually gone along to try and pick up a girl. I'd seen John around in the chip shop, on the bus, that sort of thing, and thought he looked quite cool, but would we have ever talked? I don't know. As it happened, though, I had a school friend who knew John, and then I also happened to share a bus journey with George to the school. All these small coincidences had to happen to make the Beatles happen, and it does feel like some kind of magic. It's one of those wonderful lessons about saying yes when life presents these opportunities to you. You never know where they could lead. And as if all these crazy coincidences weren't enough, it turns out that someone else who was at the fete had a portable tape machine, one of those old Grundigs. So there's this recording, admittedly a pretty bad quality, of the Quarrymen's performance that day. You can listen to it online, and there are also a few photos around of the band on the back of the truck. So this day, that proved to be pretty pivotal in my life, still has its presence and exists in these ghosts of the past. After the Quarrymen's show, the group, along with Ivan Vaughan and McCartney, went to Woolton's pub, where they lied about their ages to get served. Later on, Lennon and Pete Shotton discussed the young McCartney and whether to invite him to join their group. For Lennon, it was a dilemma. Should he admit a talented member who may pose a challenge to his own superiority within the group? Or should he persist without McCartney, retaining his leadership yet likely consigning the group to failure? They decided McCartney would be an asset, and roughly 2 weeks later, Shelton encouraged McCartney, cycling through Woolton. Paul mulled over the invitation to join, and eventually agreed to join the Quarrymen's ranks. So I will end the video here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so, it would help the channel to grow, as well as giving it a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. And more importantly, I wish everyone a good day. Tune in again soon for the Beatles Forever. The Beatles on this date. Thank you. Bye.